And recently they had that vote for Brexit that is still, like, people still don't really know if that was good or that was bad. I mean, I've heard arguments on both sides. I have a few opinions on it, but we're not going to get into that too big. It's just, like, there's so many parties that were involved in that, and then most of them all melted away and disappeared, and left just a couple of them standing just to take the brunt of everything.
Well, hey, Spider, let me point something out to you. We're not really we are by default or by language a two-party system. But I just want to point out to you something that Trump effectively cleared out almost half of the Republican Party, maybe even a little more, maybe 2/3 of them turned their noses up at him and said, "We're not doing this." And it was led by Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, the charge away from him. A two-party system is supposed to be, we believe in this, and the second party says, well, we believe in this. Really what you have is the Democratic Party and then the Republican Party, which is a little less worse than the Democratic Party. I would argue that at this stage in our history, it is no longer a two-party system, that it's monocratic. And at that, when I say that is bad for us, because it is leading into the idea that a one-world government is a good idea, and it's not. And I think that's what we're about ready to see get cleared up here, lickety-split.
Yeah, I feel, not to get too far into my own politics, because I have some really particular outlooks on things that I think might take a lot of the focus of the show into a different direction here. But just to touch on it briefly, it just seems like it's more of a one-party system, basically, more than anything else. And it's just seemed like that more the last several terms. I mean, people are going to say, "Oh, well, you're just saying that about Obama," and I'm like, no, not really. It started way before Obama, back when I was a kid and could remember some of this political stuff. Because as a kid, you see this stuff happening, and people are trying to explain to you, "Oh, well, this person's for this person's for this," and it all sounds about the same. And
well, you know what? You mark my words, man. I understand you. In 2 years, you're going to say, "Hey, what this guy really did was to really articulate the differences between the two parties, if there ever will be a Democratic Party again after this election. They'll have to rethink it." And I think that's really, it's a good thing. It's going to be rough for us for a little while because of the newness of it, but by the same token, I think your faith will be restored, even though you're kind of the guy that's kind of, I don't know, would you call yourself on the fence or just out of it altogether?
I'm pretty much out of the box for the moment, anyway. It would take almost a bit of a miracle to get me more put a little bit more faith in the political system. But things can happen. I'm open to changing my mind if something did happen to really make me want to change it. So I don't want to be stuck in the no, down with the system forever, because I've stopped being a teenager quite a long time ago.
Interesting. And I like I said, I would say you give this a little chance and you see what he can do, and I think your faith in the system will be restored just by shining a light on what's been happening behind our backs for so long. What looks wicked today in a very short amount of time will turn around and you'll say, my God, we have been blindfolded this entire time and fed a storyline about our leaders that has been completely the narrative that is rammed down our throat, whether you understand it, know it or not, will become exposed in a very real way, and you'll go, oh, I never understood that, and now I will. And I would say you give them a short amount of time, and most clear-thinking people will say, yeah, I'm glad he came in there to do that.
Well, in a few more short days, we are going to find out.
Yes, we will. But I'll give you the short story. He's going to win, and there's no doubt in my mind. Yeah, that's the end of the story. I'll just tell you 6 days in advance.
There's your election prediction. He's pretty solid in his prediction here, folks. So if anybody wants to place your bets, now is the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What do you think, Shels? A bit of an extended break, get a few more songs in, decompress?
Yeah, but the thing is that Scott wanted to talk about his song "We Shall Never Surrender." So you were going to say that in the green room. So tell us, folks, about "We Shall Never Surrender."
Yep, let's do that. Go ahead.
Okay, so this was an interesting tune, and it's kind of an old one that I'd written, or one that I'd written very kind of maybe. Well, I wrote it 15 years ago and recorded it 15 years ago. It was, imagine 2001, 9/11, that day happened, and that song was written and completed on the 21st of September 2001 because of the way that I felt after the Twin Towers had fallen to the hands of terrorists. I was crushed, hurt, damaged, angry, bewildered, all the things that every one of us, we all felt the same feelings. I was part of that, just like everyone else was, and I could express it writing and music. Writing that was about talking to Osama bin Laden, saying, "I can see you, and we're going to come after you, and we're going to kill you." And I don't know if it was cathartic for me at the time to write that, because it felt so good to see the end result ahead of time as a musician or as a human or whatever else you want to call it. But it felt very good to me to be able to say that after being damaged so brutally on a day like that, where we were just forced to take something like that. And after that, I listened to it in my car probably 1,000 times because it made me feel good. And then I put it away a couple of years later, and I didn't really listen to it again until the day that Obama came out and said, "We got him. He's dead. We killed him." And on YouTube, I released that song for the first time on the day that Osama bin Laden was announced killed, within 30 minutes of the announcement. And it's listed on YouTube as the first tune that came out that was pro-American against Osama bin Laden on the day that it occurred. So if you go back in time and check the date that it was released on YouTube, you can correlate that to the exact date that Osama bin Laden was killed.
See, you should be on Wikipedia with that.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to go home and edit it right now, and then they're going to add an extra edit of, "He's also some stinking Trump supporter, and I don't..."
Yeah. Well, I had to, for a while there, it was up, and a lot of people were, they didn't really dig it too much, thinking that it was too much. They introduced a word to that song. They called me a jingoist at the time. And I had to look the word up. What does that mean? And what is jingoism? What is that? What it means is a guy who's banging the drum for a country saying, "We're better than you." So I got pinned as a guy who was singing jingo songs that was essentially, and Christian groups came after me or were talking about me openly, and they were very critical of that view, and it puzzled me that people didn't want to feel the release of justice that had been given to us by him dying. And by the way, just so everyone knows this for a fact, I voted for Obama 2 times, term 1 and term 2. And so, and for the most part, I've voted Democratic for my entire life. For the most part, I really loved the idea of Obama the first term. It really was a romance that I had with a guy who came in and said, "Hey, man, I got hope for you." And I looked at him and I thought, "The black guy, he's articulate, he speaks like I've never heard anyone speak. He's eloquent, he's He brings brightness and hope and goodness to the world at a time where we're broke. And I really hated George Bush. I hated him and his dad. His George H. Bush. I called the warden. I used to call him the warden because he felt like a jailer. And then George W. Bush just felt like a moron. And get this about George Bush. Trump pulled this out, and it is so true. Do you know that when the Twin Towers came down, Colin Powell said right off the bat, listen, the guy that you want to go after is Osama bin Laden. But he didn't take that advice. He went after Saddam Hussein, who had nothing to do with the Twin Towers coming down, and made it sound like it had everything to do with it. But really what he was doing is avenging his dad from the previous wars and the previous administrations under the guise that he was solving an issue that was non-related. Now, what kind of an asshole does not take the advice of the closest person as basically his intelligence that says, I'm going to go after the wrong guy? When a star individual like a Colin Powell comes to you and is clear about who committed the atrocity, that to me seems unbelievably unjust. And he was our president. So when Obama came in, he was a sweet relief to me. And he was a good one-termer. He was a terrible two-termer. If I could have rolled back the hands of time, I'd have never voted for that guy term two. There's a huge part of me, especially living out here in California, that has very liberal views. But in this election, it's not. So there's kind of a dichotomy there.
Yep. On that note, I think we're ready for the next break. Right, Shels?
Cool. We are.
Because we got to play the song, don't we?
Play what song?
That whole segment we were talking about a song, right?
Yeah.
We played. It was right before.
We already played.
See,
See, now I'm sidetracked. I was so serious and trying to keep everything on track that I just missed everything.
Yeah, we came into that song. So when people go back and listen to the song, and then they're like, "Oh wait, he's talking about that song in the beginning." Yes, we are.
Okay.
So now we're all.
See, everybody,
back
you're all on the better page than I am. I'm lost off somewhere because I was so focused on my important moderation duties. So that's good. Mm-hmm. So hey, it's time for a break.
All right, so we're going to take a small break, and then we are going to kind of like low-key this a little bit. Kind of like...
We're going to be friends again.
Yeah,
we're going to be friends again.
So,
we're going to sing, we'll sing Kumbaya.
I knew you were going to say that. Oh, my God. All right.
Kumbaya, my lord.
All right, so... I'm going to go on a small break, and we get back. We'll listen to another Scott Reed with Hip Pocket. So don't go away.
Cool.
Alrighty. If you guys listen to Spotlight, our first and only show of it, Julian from Erotic City asked to come back on this show on Let's Talk About the Music, the humorous controversial talk show, Global Mix of Music. And, well, we're going to get him back on here November 9th, and we are going to talk about his independent musician side instead of just his tribute band to Prince. It's all get started right here, November 9th, starting 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. More details, go to letstalkaboutthemusic.com.
Disclaimer. Let's Talk About the Music, LTATM Radio, is broadcast on Spreaker.com. We play only independent musicians from across the globe. We get all of our music from friends and MusicSubmit.com.
Woohoo! Let's Talk About the Music is starting.
What is Let's Talk About the Music, and why are you so excited about it?
It's a podcast with controversial talk and a global mix of music.
Oh, cool. How and where can I listen?
Just go to letstalkaboutthemusic.com and click follow to be sure to get all the info.